Good morning, Hemshech Ayin Beis. We're on top of page 1214, page of 1214. And yesterday I reviewed at length the difference between the Arizal and the Ramak regarding Keser in context of what we're learning here, that Chochma is called Rishis. Rishis is also the beginning of Rishis, the top, the head, the beginning of a process, but it's a beginning that associates with the process. It's part of the process. Like we spoke about Chochma. So Chochma's Muvdal is higher than the other spheres, but it's one of them. It's the first of the 10 spheres. And essentially it's the beginning of the process of Mamala Kalam. Keser, on the other hand, is Ratzon. It's a Makif. So it's outside of the actual process, is the desire for the process. Like we said, Keser Klali, Keser Prati. And indeed, here it's called Rishon. So Rishon, what is the meaning Rishon? So there's two meanings that it could be. Initially, Rishon leNetzalim is the head, is the first of the emanations. But then he said that according to the fact that he says Yashleimer Shamashanika Rishon Shuan Netzel HaRishon. Netzel HaRishon is higher than Rishon leNetzalim. Rishon leNetzalim means is the first of the emanations. So it's the first of a series. It's different than Chochma, because Chochma is the first of spheres, not just first of the emanations. Chochma is the first of the 10 spheres, which means that it's in a state of already Mamala Kalam, in the imminent energy that enters into existence. Whereas Keser, that's Rishis. Keser is Rishon. But here Rishon can mean Rishon leNetzalim. So he says, no, Yesh Leimer, that Rishon means even Netzel HaRishon, the first emanation. Not just the first of the emanations. So really we have like three levels here. Chochma is the first of the spheres, Mamala Kalam and Hagvul, which is Rishis. Keser can be either Rishon leNetzalim, the first of the emanations, which in a shortly we'll explain, that is like Arich, the lower level of Keser according to the Arizal. And then there could be Netzel HaRishon, the first emanation, which would make it even higher than the first of the emanations. So the Rebbe Rashab says that, therefore, when you say first emanation, it's higher because it relates more. Says according to the Ramak, that is easy to, that we can say easily according to the Ramak. He doesn't use the word easily, but he says Efshalemer. Why? Because that's what the Ramak says. That Keser is higher than the spheres, but it associates with Ein Sof. So it's an emanation, it's the first emanation. And it doesn't relate so much to the spheres themselves, even though it is among the spheres, but it's still on a higher level. Like he says, Kesem Ein Sof b'derech Ilul v'Olol. The way it relates to Ein Sof, it's Ilul v'Olol. Now, as we'll soon explain, that's of course Ein Sof cannot be the Ein Sof, but according to the Arizal Lifnei Tzimtzum, which is not Ilul v'Olol. That's a complete paradigm shift. On the other hand, he says mishtava should be chinis, and it's mishtava. Not on the other hand, mishtava hamaitzel imanetza. In other words, Keser is that interface that on one hand it's not Ein Sof, pure Ein Sof, but it has a similarity to it, and it's closer to Ein Sof than other levels. U'Mekol Mokim, says the Ramak, the Pardes, in another place, Keser b'minyan asfiris. Minyan Asfiris, so means it does associate with the Sphiris. So that would be explained why you could say Netzel HaRishon. According to the Arizal, something changes dramatically, because according to the Arizal, there's a Tzimtzum. Since the Arizal introduces Tzimtzum HaRishon is a complete leap. There's no Ilav Olol. The Ein Sof before the Tzimtzum and the after the Tzimtzum is not cause and effect. It's not Ilav Olol, which is more relative to each other. Cause and effect, Ilah and Ol. And there's something similar. Here there's nothing similar between Ein Sof before the Tzimtzum and after the Tzimtzum. So even so, Atzilus HaKeser is also through the Tzimtzum. So Keser is through the Tzimtzum. So therefore you would call it Rishon leNetzalim, not Netzel HaRishon, because it's Rishon, it associates more to the Netzalim. However, in the Arizal also you can explain there's both levels. Because the Arizal says that Keser also has something from Tachtenu Shebemaitzil. as it's the lowest level of the Maitzel, of the emanate. Back in the Maimer, Elamase that he refers to, he explains why that's not similar to the to Ramak. If Atik is the lower level of Ein Sof, so in other words, it's like the Ramak, that there's something in common. So there he says no. In two ways, it's nothing. It's not something in common. First of all, Tachtenu Sheba Maitzil still means that the Maitzil is Tachtenu Sheba Maitzil. He explains there it means that the Maitzil itself has manifested itself in Atik, like we learned before about Bein Shnei Badei Ha'aron with the small mirrors, that he's able to take Ein Sof in Chochma. This is even more so, that the Maitzil has manifested itself in Atik. The Ramak doesn't say that. The Ramak says Keser is a level that is similar to Ein Sof. Here we're not saying it's similar. We're saying that in Atik lies a certain power of Ein Sof, if not Tzimtzum, so to speak. And an Arich, on the other hand, is Rishon l'Netzolim. That's what he says here. So one second. The actual that's Atik, and Arich would be Rishon l'Netzolim. So based on that, it sounds like that Atik could be either seen as Netzel HaRishon. I think not necessarily, because that's more a language that fits to the Ramak, but there's definitely a higher level than Arich. If you want to understand this better, you have to go to the Maimer and Elamase. I'll look at it in a second. I just want to see the last line. Right. It's a mamutza ubchinas maitzel sheboy einu masha nesava. So therefore, according to the Ramak, Keser was nesava. Keser was actually emanated. Yeah, I think it's very clear that you can't say netzel harishon on Atik. I take back. I thought that you could. You can't, because when you say Atik is techten sheba maitzel, God basically implanted the Ein Sof before the Tzimtzum into Atik. So it's not that it was Nesava from before the Tzimtzum. It is actually a taste of pre-Tzimtzum energy. Whereas according to the Ramak, Keser is an actual Netzal, which means it actually emanated. However, it's the first emanation. So it has something in common with Ein Sof. So in two ways, the Ramak and the Arizal are different. One is the Ein Sof is not quite as high by the Ramak. On the other hand, by the Ramak, it's something in common. The Arizal, the opposite. Ein Sof is completely removed, and it's not something in common. Is that Ein Sof has now in some way been imparted into Atik. That's what he says in the Maimer of Elamase. Yeah, I explained it then. I remember at length. We spoke about it really at length. I just want to see one thing there, because he literally asked this question.
Is also
Hold on. I just want to read something from page 329 in volume 1 of Ayin Beis. So he says like this: that Das Arizal beina Keser ina kedas Pardis. So he says, even though the fact that he say Tachtenu Sheba Maitzil, that Atik is the lower level of the Maitzil, he says, so the Cheda, Zeu Gamkin Indian Erech V'Ishtavus. So that also sounds like it's commensurate, like the Ramak, that there's something in common with Ein Sof. So the Rebbe Rashab says that the Dasa Pardis HaKeser Eina Ein Sof, Ki im Bechinis Misavim HaEin Sof. Keser is not Ein Sof. Keser was created from Ein Sof, and it has something in common with it. Dasa Arizal B'Inyan HaKeser ShaKeser Ein Sof Ve'Eina Ein Sof. That Keser is both Ein Sof, the higher level, and the lower level. It's not Ein Sof; it's the counts in the spheres Arich. That's what he says at the bottom of page 329. So yes, I did accurately sum that up. Okay. So on one hand, the Arizal gives us deeper connection with Ein Sof, but you have to remember that it requires a paradigm shift to do that. The Ramak gives us a lower level of Ein Sof, but there's no paradigm shift necessary, because there's no tzimtzum. But according to Ramak, you don't connect to the highest levels. Basically, according to Arizal, you have to have a lot more bittul to connect to a level of Ein Sof that's completely beyond us. According to the Ramak, the level of Ein Sof completely beyond us is not accessible. That which is accessible relates more to Keser. That's in essence the difference between them. But in context of what we're discussing here, Netzel HaRishon and Rishon LeNetzolim, so Netzel HaRishon seems to be an expression that you could say according to the Ramak, not according to the Arizal. Rishon LeNetzolim is Arich, according to the Arizal, it's the beginning of the emanations, it's the lower level of Keser. Okay.
But even Arizal, Netzel HaRishon is Le'achar HaTzimtzum.
Excuse me?
Even
according to the Ramak, there is no Tzimtzum.
No, Arizal.
So there's no Tzimtzum.
Arizal.
The Arizal, there's no word Netzel Rishon. According to Arizal, you wouldn't use the word Netzel Rishon.
But Atzilus HaKeser is La'achar HaTzimtzum. Even Atik. Right?
Yeah, but Atik is Tachtena Shebe Ein Sof.
Tachtena Shebe Matzil, right? But this is La'achar HaTzimtzum.
It seems like it's a taste from before the Tzimtzum, but maybe, yeah.
Oh, he's saying it clearly in page Reish Yudalev. לשיטת האריזל, אצילוס הכסר הוא גם כן על ידי הצמצום, ואם כן הוא ראשון לנצולים, רק שלשיטת האריזל, יש בו מבחינות תחתינו שבמעצי.
Yeah, so correct. You're saying it accurate. Correct. It's after the tzimtzum, but it has in it something from tachtena shebemaitz. Yes, correct. That's correct. Rishon lenetzolim, not Rosh. Yeah, good. Now,
so we always consider Atik after the tzimtzum. We always consider that Atik is. We always call Atik after the tzimtzum. We always say that. That's after the tzimtzum.
Well, actually, there's Atika ke'ein Atika b'reish galgalta the Ak. That's like a level that is from Malchus the Ein Sof becomes Atik of, yeah. Okay, good. I was going to go a step further even. Why is this relevant to our discussion? Because when you think about interface, remember we're discussing Gan Eden as interface between Atzilus and Bria, and I'm sure he's going to connect it to Keser and Chochma soon. So let's just keep in mind that Keser has many different ways, well, several different ways of how to explain its interface role. There's the way the Ramak explains it, and there's the way the Arizal explains it. Now, we, of course, go with the Arizal, but the Ramak illuminates certain aspects of it. Okay. So now he goes outside of the parentheses. We continue learning. So he says like this. Now that we've established Chochma is Reshis, the beginning of the spheres, Keser is Rishon, either Netzel HaRishon or Rishon LeNetzolim. It's removed, it's Rishon. So now he says, and this is the meaning that Keser and Chochma, Shneim Bechinas Nekuda. They both are considered a Nekuda, a dot, a point. Bina is already an expansion, an extension. Chochma and Keser are both called Nekuda, but their Nekuda is very different. And now let's listen to this. The difference is they both are a Nekuda, which means because they both are the beginning of a process. One is the beginning of the process, Chochma Reshis, that is part of the process. One is the beginning of the process that's removed from the process, it's above the process, like Rotzen. Like I said yesterday, the desire for a home and the beginning of the design of the home. So he said the difference is Chochma, the Nekuda of Chochma is like a Yud, the letter Yud. Sheyesh b'tziyah the Gimel Keser. A Yud is indeed a dot, a point, but if you break down a Yud in specifics, it has three Keser, it has 3 points. It has the top drop, the top point that goes up, the bottom point that goes down, and there's the center. So Yud, as much as it's a point, it already has structure. Mashenk and Keser, hu nekuda bli shum tzir klal. Keser is a point that doesn't have any shape and form. Yeah. You did? One second, people. 1 second.
What's Gimel Koitzin by Yud? Shnei Koitzin.
I just explained the middle one. So it has a top, a bottom, and a center. That's what means the three kates. Okay. So now, Keser, on the other hand, an akuda, bli shum tzir klal. Without any form. It's just like you would make literally a dot. Now, of course, we're not talking physically. So in other words, in a point itself, in mathematics, by the way, a point, a line and a plane, the kuda kav shetach, the point doesn't occupy space. But I don't know if they talk about two types of points. Here, he's clearly talking about two types of points. One point that has structure, but it's still a point. It's a yud, it's not a hey. And the other point of Keser, which is a point without shape and form, which makes it more removed from structure. Remember, he said with Chochma before, he spoke about the apirion, that it's like the color, like a blank white slate upon which you paint colors. So it is part of when you make a map, you need to have a white surface, and then you paint on it. So it's part of the process. It's a piece of the art. It's a piece of the image. Keser is rotzen. It's not even yet in that type of structure. It's beyond structure. So it's consistent with what he said, Rishon, Reshis, and Rishon. Remember, it all began by explaining in the previous page, Ani Rishon, Ani Achron, right? We started speaking Ani Rishon, Vani Achron. I am the first and I am the last. Now all this is coming to explain Rishon. We explained in Rishon the difference between Rishon and Reshis. So now he goes back and concludes this and says, V'zeu Ani Rishon. Ani Oisius Ayin. So first of all, Ani I is the same letters as Ayin, which is bittul, nothingness. V'hu b'chinas Ayin de Keser. It's talking about the bittul, the nekuda of Keser, that doesn't have any shape and form, because it's so bottle that it's not yet come part of a structure. It's the desire of God. The Keser is Ratzon, but Ratzon is essentially all about God's desire. So the Keser is not about its own structure, it's about expressing God's will. Makar HaChochma is the source for Chochma. So that's Ani Rishon. Ani, the bittul of Keser is Ani, Ayin. Makar HaChochma, the B'chinas Chochma, Nikri Yesh, L'gabei. Because Chochma is called Yesh compared to the Ayin of Keser. Now we know that Chochma is called Ayin compared to the Yesh of Bina. But Chochma compared to Keser is Ayin. Because Chochma is already the beginning of a concept. It's the beginning of some structure. Yes, it's the beginning. It's only a nekuda. But compared to the Ayin, the dot of Chochma, the Yud of Chochma is Ayin compared to Yesh rather, compared to the Ayin, the nekuda without structure of Keser. Okay. That's Ani Rishon. So Ani Rishon essentially means the Ayin of Rishon of Keser, which is the beginning of Chochma, which is the source of Chochma. And what about Vani Achron? What's Vani Achron? And I am the last. Vani Achron b'chinas Ayin the Malchus, safe called Dargin Datzilus. That's the other end of the spectrum. Remember, he said Ani Rishon is before Ishtalshlus. Ani Achron is the end of Ishtalshlus. In this context, Ishtalshlus is talking here the 10 spheres of Atzilus. So Rishon, Ani Rishon is Keser before Ishtalshlus. The Ani Rishon, which is Keser. The Ani Achron is Ayin, is the Ayin of Malchus, which is also a state of Bittul. Malchus doesn't have anything of its own. Malchus, safe called Dargin Datzilus, the end of all the levels of Atzilus, Mokir, B'chinas HaYesh de Biyah. That Ayin is the source for the Yesh, the substance that will be created in the world of Biyah. So Ayin here is being referred to Bittul, Yesh is being referred to structure. So basically, the Ayin of Keser is the source for the Yesh of Chochma, that's Ani Rishon, and the Ayin of Malchus is the source for the Yesh of Biyah, that's Ani Achron. Okay. And then he goes on. So what's the pasuk coming to say? V'omer, Ani Rishon v'Ani Achron. He says, I am the first and I am the last. I am meaning Keser and Malchus of the end of Atzilus, Keser of Atzilus, and Malchus of Atzilus. The Kamoisha ani Achron bebechinas Malchus, safe called Dargin. Lahavis Abri Yesh Ma'ayin bepel Mamish, Shenikra Asiya Gashmis. So what is he saying? So just as it is in Malchus and Ani Achron, that under the levels that creates the world of Bria of Yesh Ma'ayin, the Pel Mamish, in actuality, Shenikra Asiya Gashmis, which is called the physical world of Asiya, comes from Ani Achron, from Malchus, the end of all the levels. Kach Mamish, Ani Rishon lahavis ha-chochma ma'ayin b'bchinas Asiya Gashmis Mamish b'shava bli shinui klal. Oh boy, okay. So too equally, Ani Rishon is saying, I am the first to create Chochma Ma'ayin. Chochma is also Yesh Ma'ayin. Like Bria from Malchus, Chochma is from Keser, B'chinas Asiya Gashmis Mamish. It's like the level of Asiya Gashmis Mamish, B'li Shinui Klal. So what it sounds like he's saying, which is what Chassidus does say, that Chochma and Asiya are equal. Kulam b'Chochma Sisa. He says the word Chochma Sisa is not just everything God created with Chochma. What's the Chiddush? That Chochma and Asiya are compared to godliness are equal mamish. That's what it sounds like he's saying here. So Kamoy Ani Achron, just as the Ani Achron is the way Malchus creates Asiya Gashmi, is the same thing. The Ani Rishon, the Havis HaChochma Ma'ayim B'chinas Asiya Gashmi mamish, the Shava Bli Shinui Klal. There's no change. That's Chochma is equal to that Asiya Gashmi. That's what it sounds like he's saying here. To just show you how infinitely distant it is, and of course this works very well with our Rizal. With the Ramak may be a little more difficult, as I think about it. I'm not sure. The Gamzes, and additionally, another thing that is coming to tell us, Dani Achrin, whom B'chinas Ani Rishon, that the last level, Ani Achron, originates from the level of Ani Rishon. The B'chinas Ayin, the Keser, B'chinas Ayin, the Malchus, the not Seifim B'tchilasam, B'Seifim B'tchilasam, the not Tchilasam, B'Seifim, B'Seifim B'tchilasam. So two things. The next point that he makes is Ani Rishon and Ani Achron, that they're similar. That because the beginning is wedged in the end and the end in the beginning, so the Ani Rishon, the Ani Achron, comes from the Keser. Malchus, Ani Achron, comes from the Ani Rishon of Keser. The Ayin. So the Ayin of Malchus comes from the Ayin of Keser. The Ayin of Achron comes from the Ayin of Rishon. Because the beginning is wedged in the end and the end in the beginning. Now, he hasn't explained that yet. He just stated it. So 2 points are being made here. That one, that there's a comparison between the Yesh of Asiya, created by the Ani Achron, to the Yesh of Chochma, created by Keser. But he doesn't explain it. It just states it. What's the point? What point is he trying to make? We're going to learn in the next paragraph. But that's what he states here. So I understand there's no explanation yet. So if you don't understand it, I don't either. He didn't explain it. But Inyan, in the next paragraph, he's going to explain what this means. What does this mean, and why is it relevant to our discussion here when we talk about Keser and Malchus, and we talk about Chochma and Biyah, Asiya Gashmis. Why is he trying to say this? Sounds like he's comparing Chochma to Biyah, which would explain why Gan Eden, in other words, has a gili of Chochma and of Atzilus, maybe. I'm not sure yet. I don't want to guess. Because I have to do something today, I'm going to end earlier, but I will stop if anybody has any questions. No questions?
Yeah, I do. When it says there that Malchus is so-called Dargas, Lahavas Abriye, Yesh Mi'ayin, Opal Mamish, we were talking about Malchus of Atzilus, and then it jumps all the way down to Yesh Mi'ayin Olam Asiya. What about Bria Yetzira? What's happening there?
It seems like he's jumping straight to there. Not sure why he's doing that, but I think because he wants to. I'm not sure. I don't have an answer for that. I noticed it as well. He just it seems to me he's including everything after Malchus goes right to Biyah, all the way to Asiya Gashmis.
Right.
Why he's doing it that way, I'm not sure. It sounds to me he wants to show how Biyah, all the way to Asiya Gashmis, is equal to Chochma in some way.
Yes. Of course, Bria and Yetzirah, even Asiya, it's equal to Chochma. Bria and Yetzirah, of course, they are higher than
but why? But why does he want to emphasize that? That's not clear why he wants to emphasize. It seems like he wants to, because he wants to explain how Chochma, as much as it's a high level, but since it's the beginning of this process, it's infinitely distant from the levels before. But he hasn't explained why yet. Can't answer that question. I'm not sure yet exactly why. We'll learn. We'll learn it inside.
And one more question: the Keser of the Yud itself, physically, is that the Kotzel Shel Yud? But
here he doesn't say that. Sometimes it says that. Here he doesn't say that. Here the Kotzel Shel Yud b'Pashtus is the Keser Sheba Chochma, but Keser itself is like its own akuda beyond. That's what it sounds like here. Some places he does say that the Keser within Chochma is the Kotzel Shel Yud. The Bina within Chochma is the Kaitz on the bottom, and Chochma itself is the main bulk. But I think here he's saying it is a separate Nakud, a separate level of Ayin. I would wait because the topic is not finished, and there are a lot of loose ends here, to be very honest. I can't tell you at all because I didn't learn it.
Okay.
But I'm going to stop here at the end of the paragraph on 12.